Hello, I'm Brian Foster, and today I'm talking about Spiritism. And today we have our regular live stream on Tuesday. Today is March 8th, 2022. We are on the middle of chapter 11, the home of the Assyrian. Before I begin, let's have a short prayer. Dear Jesus, please help us refocus, reemphasize our quest for spiritual knowledge over our quest for material goods. We just ask for your help to make a small adjustment to help us on the path to spiritual goodness and purity, for us to learn what is and what is not important on this earth. Amen. So far, we are on chapter 11, in the middle of chapter 11, and I am interpreting this book that was written in the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. And it was a spirit who psychographed it to R.J. Lees, a medium, about his first days, really, in heaven. And I'm interpreting through the doctrine of Spiritism. Now, if you're interested in the doctrine of Spiritism, which tells us so much more about the spirit world, why we are here, what heaven is like, what we do in heaven, who we are as a spirit, I suggest you download in PDF format, or you can buy it in a bookstore or Amazon.com, or you can click on the link in my blog site, nwspiritism.com. The picture of Allan Kardec will take you to the FEB bookstore, and you can buy a copy of the Spirits book. But you can also download it for free on PDF. It is a series of 1,019 questions. And it was therefore then Allan Kardec codified the Spirits book in the answers by groups of spirits to these questions. And these were not questions. He was not a medium. He didn't channel it through one medium. He sent the same questions to different mediums and did not use the answers unless they were the same or similar. So therefore, and of course, all these spirits were organized with the Spirit of Truth as promised to us by Jesus in the New Testament. Now, if you want to get an overview of Spiritism, I suggest you read my book, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation. That is available on PDF, so you can download for free, again, on my site, nwspiritism.com. It's also available in Kindle, paperback, and in Audible format. Also, on the Spirits book, I have the entire Spirits book in MP3 and in Audible format that you can download for free, or if you're watching this on a YouTube channel, and my playlist, you can go to the Spirits book playlist and look, and I read every chapter. So let's begin. Let me bring up the home of the Assyrian. So before we begin with the home of the Assyrian, let's talk about what is an Assyrian. Why do they call him Assyrian? I don't know why they call him Assyrian. Probably because he was in Assyrian. Now, what's an Assyrian? That was a civilization that began as an empire about 3,500 years ago. And about 600 years even before that, like 4,000 years ago, it was more of a city-state. And it rose to prominence, I think, after the Babylonian civilization or the Sumerian civilization went under or became weaker. And so the Assyrians were pretty important empire for 500-700 years, quite a long time. And so this Assyrian, who was the one that if you remember it in earlier chapters, he's the one that helped into this big auditorium, help all these people when they were asleep and disfigured and deformed from their time in the lower zone and the dark abyss. And he helped them, he woke them up. He's just full of kindness. And now in chapter 11, they went to his kind of palace kind of thing. It's huge. And it's bordered by two rivers, like it's an island created by two rivers. And it's this huge complex with kind of a pyramid shape with large porticos and terraces all around it for each floor. And in the middle was this tree. Now we're going to describe the tree. But as an interesting fact is, okay, so you wonder how many lives did he have after he was an Assyrian, right? Because it's been quite a long time. And once you understand Spiritism, it's interesting because like people like um, Chico Xavier. Now, some people say he was Allan Kardec. And before that, John the Baptist. And before that, he was a Babylonian priest. And he was also at one time an Egyptian pharaoh. So this is over what, 6,000 years of this person has been in positions of authority and important positions. So it shows you how long our journey is to become a better and better spirit. Chico's I would say he's a high spirit now. He's right up there, not on the same level of Jesus Christ, of course, but he's pretty high up. Of course, he's probably the highest up person I was on the earth at the same time. I never met him. And I didn't become interested in spiritism until after he passed away. But I read about him and heard other people who've talked to him, and I read a lot of his books, so it's very interesting. Okay. But anyway, it just gives you kind of an overview of the process we go through. It's a long process. And I'm not saying as a perfect fact of who Chico Xavier was in previous lives. These are just this kind of fun thesis and suppositions by people in Spiritism. And, we're told it doesn't make really the difference, but, people love this type of conjecture. Okay. So now Fred, who's the spirit, who really wants to remain nameless, but he's part, and he's saying he's going into this middle of this kind of huge palace structure. And this is what the Syrian is telling him. This, said he, is the tree, and also the water of life, so necessary to restore the weary and recuperate the exhaustion of those who come here to rest. So a lot of people are on his in his palace, on around in the grounds, and that's because the people who have lived good lives and who have striven to become less materialistic and more spiritual and have gone against the grain, they've had a lot of headwaters against them. They've had a lot of pushback, a lot of turmoil in their lives, and they need to rest and relax when they cross over. I'll carry on. It forms a method of reinvigoration, which is the equivalent of the chorale. That's where he cured people with his own mediumistic power. The stream which supplies and energizes this tree, and also many other and similar homes, is the strongest and richest of which we have any idea. We are told it takes its rise in the vicinity of the throne of God, for it never varies in the consistency of its flow. To us who know it best and watch its workings, the most marvelous quality it possesses is its remarkable adaptation to the particular requirements of every case in which it ministers. It leaves nothing for us to do but watch and wait while it works a complete restoration. When its cooling spray falls into the eyes, the foundation of the fountain of tears are completely wiped away. It lingers upon the careworn brow until every furrow has disappeared. It drops its seed within the broken heart, then laves it with melody until the song of victory has bloomed. But come and see some of the friends who are lying beneath the benediction of its waters till they recover from the effects of earth's fitful fever. Now let's talk about this ability of water to kind of customize for each person of how they can help them recover. And you read this in other spiritual literature. In the book Memoirs of a Suicide by Yvonne Pierre, a wonderful book. When these people were rescued from this valley where suicides had to be entailed, and this is not always, right? There's always exceptions, but a general rule, suicides have to reside on the lower zone until the time of when we're planned to exit from the earth. And so they were taken to this place and they were given this meal. And they said they each had this broth or whatever it was. And he said that each of them tasted something different. It tasted different for each. For one, it tasted as the breakfast that his mother gave him. Another one, the dinner they had as a family. It was all like their favorite memories came back as they ate that food. And so, again, this is possible. This is the complexity uh, of the spirit world. It's just beyond our imagination. So this water, when he says, it fits everyone somehow, he doesn't know how, but it helps everyone recover in their own special way. And yes, that is true, because when you have all this data with knowledge of everyone who's there, and then you maybe have high spirits helping influence the water into that particular case, but unseen. So, I mean, the spirit world is a land worth fighting to enter. Okay, I'll carry on. I shall not attempt to describe the apartments in which these weary children of earth were sleeping the shadows away. If words would serve me for the purpose, no mind in prison, then the limitations of mortality has the power to grasp it. Let it suffice to say that love had contributed to the handiwork of its devotion. Affection had lavished its choicest treasures. The gems of ease from every land had been improved upon. Sympathy and skill had exhausted their storehouses, until the great designer of the heavens had made that resting place for his children touch the standard of his own desire, and then pronounced it good. On reaching the second terrace, Diomedes stopped. That's the name of the Assyrian. As we neared the entrance to one apartment, in order to explain to me the circumstances of the case. Here was lying a mother whose awakening was being watched for by 3 of her children. She was the daughter of an ignorant but extremely orthodox tradesman who had inherited his religion as a kind of heirloom. She married a man who had been set apart by his family for the pulpit, but he himself was too conscientious to preach what to him was but half the truth, and in spite of the urgent persuasions of both sides, persisted in following his trade as a printer. With the advent of family responsibilities, his newly born parental feelings still further widened the gulf between himself and orthodoxy, and he gave up the last idea of becoming a preacher. His wife was fearful, but her love was real. Whispers of a state of mind began to be heard in the church, and for the sake of others, he was requested to resign. If his wife went with him. Then the man's disappointed parents, seeing their hopes fast drifting into oblivion, laid their heads together to try and restore the wandering sheep. And after much prayer, they came to the conclusion that God had ordained a little trial as a means of securing the backslider's return. They thereupon visited his employer, and by a few slanderous suggestions secured his dismissal. 9 months of gradually increasing privation followed, in which the 3 children were augmented by a 4th, but the righteous parents dare not help them to resist the chastisements of God by affording any relief. But the wife never allowed the fire of her love to go down. No murmur was ever breathed from her lips, no anxious inquiry if he had succeeded, when his wary footsteps sounded on her ears like music at night, lest her asking should increase his disappointment. Well, what a wonderful woman standing by someone who refuses to give up his inner morality and his knowledge of the fact that what he was supposed to preach had nothing to do with reality. Let me carry on. One by one, she parted with every little treasure from which her girlhood she had learned the prize. Then, that she might contrive to find something for those still more precious treasures God had entrusted to her training. Still, they withstood the entreaties of the church, for they failed to see that their misfortune was the will of God, and half suspected it had more to do with the will of a much less generous parent. It was a heavy battle they had to fight for years. At most, the husband's success secured but a bare existence, and the children continued to come until 13 had called her mother. Bravely she bore her part, putting forth almost superhuman endeavors to make both ends meet. God knew what was best, and in the end all would come right if she did but do her duty. So it was that midnight hour saw her mending, patching, darning. Morning found her weary, planning, hoping. In the lonely hours of the day, when the children were at school and her husband at his work, she was weeping, praying, and longing for the rest which never came. One by one, 3 graves had been opened before her, and heaven received 3 darlings over whom her mother's heart yearned with an ever-strengthening love. Yet for the world she had her smiles, and few people ever dreamed of the struggle with which she had to contend. She was not conscious of how she was overtaxing herself. She only knew how much more was needed than she had time or strength to accomplish. But rest comes at length. The fierceness of the battle, the ceaseless turmoil, the unending strife, the hope deferred grew too heavy for her shoulders, and while yet comparatively young, she sank beneath the load. So again, here's this woman going through much privation, right? She had hardly anything. She had 13 children, three of whom had already passed away. Of course, probably during that time, it could be by any type of sickness, because anything could get you then in the land of no antibiotics, in the time of no antibiotics. And yet all this had made her, and she suffered this and didn't let other people see it, and didn't let it affect her children. How many of us can say that? That's a wonderful victory she had. For people looking at her from the outside, like, oh, that poor woman. But now look, she's in a very important place in heaven. She has learned what is good and bad about materialistic idea, good and bad about spiritual maturity. She has increased her humility. She is now positioning herself for a rapid rise within heaven. So I'll carry on. As he finished his recital, he approached and drew aside the rich hangings which fell across the entrance. And we stood within the apartment where this heroine from life's battle slept, watch over most lovingly. Can I say patiently? By those three who have the right to call her by that sweetest name a woman knows. The eldest with a youth just short of manhood, the next a girl not much his junior, and the third a lad just entering on his teens. In their robes of almost untinted whiteness, they look like angels waiting there, not bright and brilliant in their persons, but with a soft and subdued halo breaking from them, enough to show they were no denizens of earth. Two other friends were there besides, but Simedes made me know that these were ministers whom Mahine had left in attendance, when he received her from the body and brought her there. The only sounds which broke the silence were the soft kisses the children pressed upon her lips and cheeks and forehead, as though they were impatient for that sleep to end, that they might hear her voice again. Ever and anon I saw the flush of excitement rise on each eager face as she turned or moved upon her couch, and I discerned that I had been brought here to see her wake. Presently she breathed a sigh, stretched, turned, then stretched again. The attendants gently drew the children away. Simedes left me and took his place beside the couch. Slowly he waved his hand over the sleeper's face, which now I could not see, but from the movements of her body I thought her sleep was nearly, if not quite, at an end. Another stretch, a quiet moment, then a long-drawn sigh, followed by, "Oh dear, where am I?" "Mother!" cried all the children in chorus as they bounded forward to embrace her. But I was outside. The meeting was too sacred for me to stand and gaze upon. Shortly afterwards, the curtains were again drawn aside, and she was led forth to take her first glimpse, shall I say, heaven. What else could have seemed to her? Whatever had previously been, it was undoubtedly heaven now to the children who clung so closely around her. How beautiful she looked in her newly found strength and peace, which clothed her like a robe of sweet repose, and the consciousness breaking upon her that she could never know weariness and weakness again. So, ask yourself for what this woman went through, and her wonderful children who also were in heaven, is if you are a mortal spirit on earth and you have 60, 80 years to live, and yet now this woman had gained the entrance to heaven for eternity. She will not go back unless she wants to, but that happens extremely, extremely rarely. But now her time in the spirit world will be in that paradise. Was it worth it? That's for everyone to decide for themselves. I'll carry on. As they stood upon the edge of the terrace among the flowers for her to take a survey of the surroundings, I was surprised to find that Mahine was at her side. In the concentration of my attention upon her, I had not noticed that was he who led her from the room. Where and how had he come? When I hurried out, he was not there. He had not entered since from the terrace. How had he come? Simedes joined me at this moment, and I referred my query to him. Mahine brought her from earth, and therefore it was for him to be the first, after her children, to welcome her. I had no idea that he was here. He was not. When I saw her waking, I sent for him. Does he live here then? Near and distant, only exists spiritually here, he replied. But I see you are not yet acquainted with their methods of communication and travel. So this again is a truth of the spirit world, and this can be expanded upon by what has been said by high spirits to spiritist mediums. And he says, near and distance only exists spiritually here. And in fact, let me explain this. So he means distant spiritually, right? But so what the spirits say is there's no such thing as distance. There's presence or absence. So think about that for a moment. Presence and absence. So if you're on Earth, let's say we're in the spirit world, you're on Earth, and another spirit, your best friend, is, let's say, all the way out to Pluto somewhere, visiting something. And you say, can you come here real quick? He goes, sure. Boom, they appear. Because this spirit, your best friend, let's say, wills him or herself to be where you are. They don't travel, they change their state. Now, you have the capability of moving by violation, right? Volition, in which is you move by the speed of thought, which you can say, I'm in no solar and I want to go down to the earth, and you can actually see the scenery change if you want to move that at that speed, or you can just be there instantaneously. So again, now I see you are not yet acquainted with our methods of communication and travel. So what Simedes did to Mayan, Simedes said, he sent him a word communication instantaneously saying, oh, the lady you picked up from heaven, from earth, I'm so sorry, is coming awake. And then he also sent him, in addition to the words, he sent him probably a picture of the room of where he was at. And then Simedes, then Mayan, seeing the picture and knowing he had to go there, put his mind, and he was right where the picture was. That's how that works. That's how fast you can travel. The distance means nothing. There's presence or absence. Either you're there or you're not. Now, how can that be? And that's because we look at that. Well, how can we grasp that idea? And so I would say, in order to grasp that idea, think about you're playing a game on your PlayStation, Xbox, your cell phone, or your laptop. And you have this character going through and going like from a castle down the road through a forest. Then he hops on a ship, goes across the ocean. Now is that character really moving a distance? Or is the parameters of the scenery behind him changing? And the answer is, it's all logical. The parameters of where that avatar, where that character is, has changed because you commanded it to change. And you also commanded it to see the journey. But maybe according to the game, you could command it to say, oh, appear over there. And that character would appear over there. They would appear there because the parameters of the background changed. There is no difference between that and the spirit world. The spirit world is this incredibly dense and complex set of data, and you are this wandering, intelligent character, personality that can go and you can query and say, oh, I want to go there. I want to go to that. I want to change it. I want to be at that state. How that works, I'm not sure. But I'm trying to, as well as I can, kind of give that to her. So if you visualize it, you can be there. And of course, that's the communication. They send both. Now, the interesting part is when a spirit sends a communication that includes a picture or maybe like a short movie or whatever, right? Just like you send pictures on your cell phone, it's like a little bit of a lightning bolt, a little bit of light dart comes out of their mouth, and that picture sent. And of course, that was that alludes to what John wrote about in Revelation, where we could see this high spirit with lightning and swords coming out of his mouth. That's exactly, that person was giving commands to people, and he was giving words and pictures. So Spiritism draws all this into context, and it tells you why people wrote what they wrote. And here we're telling you what he means, what Simonides means when he says, "Oh, okay, yeah, you're not yet acquainted with this." So let's carry on. He goes, and then Fred says, "No." He goes, "Now, you remember," he continued, "when you were at the corral, and Mahine projected a flash of light when he wished to speak to you. Yes, you did not understand that, but your friend read the message. It conveyed and gave the interpretation. Those flashes fly with the rapidity of thought and find their destination instantly. And when occasion demands, we have the power to travel with equal celerity. So you see, prayer is answered while we are yet speaking, and the idea of time and space annihilated in the spirit ministration." So this world that we actually live in, because we're in a simulator now, this world we actually live in, this chaotic world, this dirty world, this world full of people who, a lot of them don't mean as great things, right? Is just a edifice of our own making, so we can learn not to be the way we are, and to gather lessons about our past wrongs to become better. That's why the world is chaotic and cruel to us, because we have a lot to learn, and we've done bad things in the past. That will all go away with time, and the time we have to spend on planets such as Earth at this level, a planet of atonement, we will become a planet of regeneration. That time we have to spend in this environment, which many of us don't like. I can't tell you how many people have said, "Well, I don't want to reincarnate again." I said, "Well, we're in the spirit world. If you're in heaven, you don't have to, but you will want to because you want to ascend. But that's for you to find out. If you're in the lower zone or the dark abyss, then they'll send you there, and they won't even ask you. Like, it's like, kindergartners and nursery school. Like, no, you're just sent to school. You have no freedom of choice, right? But in heaven, you can help plan your body and your trials and tribulations. And a lot of times when people plan their bodies, trials, tribulations, heaven, they give themselves tougher trials, tougher obstacles to go through, and dramatic episodes than we want to know when we're here. Like, oh, did I have myself do that? So anyway, remember that when you go through tough trials, it's kind of you, probably. If you're a nice person, and you have to be perfect, but if you're basically a nice person and care about other people, most probably you decided what you look like. You helped decide your the blueprint, the project plan, let's say, of your life. So when you have hard times, you have to think, God, did I decide that? Am I sure? I guess if I decide that, I can take it, right? That's what I recommend. Okay. Let me carry on. Then, do you not always walk or ride? By no means. Why, in the visits you've been making, your passage has been through the air frequently. Only it comes so natural here that you have not noticed it. So any further conversation was interrupted by Mahine calling us to congratulate our sister, after which the children made a long explanation as to who Simonides was and all he had done for them while they were waiting. Then gently drawing her towards the edge of the terrace, Mahine threw his arms around her, and in one happy group they commenced their aerial journey toward the rest, which was the legitimate compensation of that once oppressed soul. Several other visits were paid, and the stories of the lies recounted for my instruction. But I must content myself with recording the last, which at once arrested my attention by the presence of a number of bright purple hairlines, which, emanating from the body of the sleeper, passed across and out of the room, I knew not whither. My friends informed me that these were love cords, which existed by reason of the uncontrollable grief of the friends left behind. Great difficulty, he explained, is frequently experienced in dealing with these earth attractions. And if friends could only know how their unrestrained grief finds repose in those they mourn, disturbing and breaking their rest, it would do so much to remedy the wrong they are thus unintentionally the cause of. So the sleeper awake before the force of these cords can be weakened, which not unfrequently happens. The soul is drawn again back to earth and naturally participates in the agony of its friends, which is also increased by the discovery that it is both powerless to make its presence known or in any way minister to the relief of the mourner. So I have said this many times, and I just want to repeat it again. When someone passes away, first of all, they are immortal. No matter what circumstances, it's probably planned. They are immortal. They're not gone. You will meet them at some point in time. Do not obsessively try to pull that person back, because your thought is action in the spirit world. And therefore, your thoughts have power that you do not know it has in the spirit world while you are still in the physical world. So hence, if you're saying, "Oh, I can't live without my husband or my wife or my daughter or my son or my best friend, I can't live without them. Please come back. My life is horrible here." All you're doing is you're making their progress in heaven, if they are in heaven, most hopefully they are, a harder thing to be successful at. You're drawing them back. And in fact, if you draw them back all the way to you, you are severely penalizing them from being in the presence of paradise and in the presence of higher spirits who can help them progress in heaven. You are actively making life worse for them. So instead, please say, "Yes, I miss you very much, but I know I'll be there a while, and I hope you all the best in heaven. If you're not in heaven, please do the best you can. Put your eyes up, look for higher spirits that will show you the way to heaven and to higher spirituality. And take your time, rest, learn as much as you can, and you can help me when I get there." And it's like a kid going away to college. If you're sending a kid to college or summer camp or wherever, you don't say, "Oh, I wish you were here so much. I'm not going to miss you so much. It's going to be the worst. I'm going to feel so terrible that you're going away." Of course, the poor child's going to go, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't go away." No, you say, "Oh, have fun," even though you're going to miss, right? You're going to miss them terribly, but you just keep that presence if that's what you need to do for people who pass away. So, in the case before us, messengers have been continually dispatched and every available influence employed to try and stem the torrent of these sorrowing friends. Now she was waking, and Simedes could see that the inevitable must come. This reminded me of my conversation with Kushna about crossing the mist, but he was away, having left me as soon as we passed the bridge on our arrival. I mentioned the matter to Simedes and dared to venture the hope that if she was drawn back and anyone followed her, I might be allowed to bear them company. "I will send for Krishna," he answered. "Perhaps he will undertake the mission and take you with him." I saw the message of light fly upon its errand, and then its response, and almost immediately Krishna himself was beside us. I was now witness to a second awakening, which might have been as beautiful and peaceful as the others, but oh, how different. My reader, think of these experiences as you may. Class them in the category of fiction if you choose. But for mercy's sake, hear me as I plead for self-restraint when you mourn the absence of a loved one called away. See, he's saying the same thing that I've said. God knows the cry of a broken heart is bitter, but remember, if the first duty of a follower of Christ is love, the second is self-abnegation. Your loss is their gain. Then I ask you rather to rejoice, for great is their reward. If you really love them, calm your grief, for the discarding of the body has not disturbed the seat of love, and your agony vibrates on its chords as much as ever. In reaching them where they are, it disturbs their rest and postpones their happiness. Remember, while here their joy corresponds to your participation therein, do you think they are so immediately changed that they could gaze in rapture upon the Savior's face, perfectly conscious of, yet indifferent to, your agony? If you grieve for love's sake, calm yourself. If you weep for sentiment and fashion, you may continue. That will never reach them where they are. That's a good one. Love, pure, unselfish love, has this power, and it is this now I appeal. You would not weep if you could stand for one brief moment where I have stood and see the things which I have seen. You would then be content to let the loved ones rest in peace upon the bosom of their God. And therefore I appeal to you, dry up your tears and let them rest until your morning breaks and your shadows have flown away. By this time, there was not the slightest doubt about the sleep being at an end. And I could see that with every fresh sign of consciousness, the lines exerted an increased influence upon her. In her half sleep, she murmured several names, as though she was being called, but was too weary to rouse up at present. Then she reluctantly woke in a dazed, half-petulant state. Next, the hazy recollection seemed to seize her. Shuddering, she turned in the direction in which their lines were running, and at the same time vacantly responding, "I'm coming, dear." Then she rose from the couch, the cords momentarily increasing their power over her. Slowly she moved at first, but every step augmented her strength and speed. Anxious marks began to show upon her face as she drew the hangings aside and stepped upon the terrace. Her excitement now grew intense. She hurried forward, and I would have interposed to save her from throwing herself over, but Kushna held me back. Mistaken love was carrying her to such an agony as little I dreamed of then, and no one had any right to use force to restrain her. All we could do was to follow and save. She reached the edge of the terrace, but did not hesitate or waver. She threw herself over and was gone. Krishna grasped my hand and bade me come across the mist upon a mission of salvation. And so that will be our next chapter, Across the Mist. So, I mean, this is just wonderful. This chapter, again, it just shows the power and the majesty and the complexity, the logical complexity of the spirit world. And so if you were interested, as I said before, as I started, in Spiritism, again, you could download the Spirit's book in PDF or my book, Spiritism 101, The Third Revelation. And also I could recommend that what you do is you read my book, the Spirit Realm. It actually will go more into what the logical construct, or you are in the spirit realm, you are in the physical realm, what you are as a spirit, how you rise as a spirit, how you learn as a spirit, how you can rise and learn and ascend as a physical human. So this, what I've done is I've brought together a lot of information from Spiritist writings and my other 14 books, and put this in one book where you can get an outline of Spiritism, and to really understand the true world, the true magnificent, just unbelievable world, not the fairy tale, not the heaven where you go and you sing hymns and you're in the Elysian fields forever, but the real heaven, the heaven of cities, of work, of learning, of power beyond your imagination. And what is that power, and how do you attain that power, is all there as you read and understand and study Spiritism. God bless.